how man may be classified. Man may be classified in a general way as being composed of 5 entirely different states of consciousness, degrees of unfoldment or conditions of development, viz. Instinct, intellect, inspiration, intuition, and revelation. Bear in mind, however, that while the instinct is a manifestation of the physical plane, the intellect of the mental, the inspiration of the soul, the intuitional and revelational of the spiritual, all these states of consciousness are just as much spiritual as is the latter, the difference being that they do not express as much. It is like ice, water, clouds, and the invisible vapour. They are all one and the same, but differ in their expression. Most persons are overdeveloped in one of these states of consciousness and underdeveloped in the others, and that is why it is so hard for them to understand the other states. Few persons are so equally developed in all of them as to be able to impart their knowledge of the inspirational, intuitional, and revelational planes in such a way as may be understood by those manifesting only on the planes of instinct and intellect. On the physical plane of consciousness, man expresses what is called instinct. The cell consciousness, which is really the intelligence in the cells of the physical body and in the atoms of the environment, is the only consciousness which is under the direction and control of the intellect, and is therefore in reality the only subconscious mind there is. For the ego's mind is never subject to the conscious mind or intellect. In the creating, destroying, recreating and redestroying of our bodies, which process is going on continuously every moment of our lives, awake or asleep, we attract to us atoms which will express the same degree of intelligence as those which harmonize with the energy we are momentarily creating by the thoughts we are thinking. As long as we remain wholly on the physical plane of consciousness, this process goes on under the law of instinct, both as to our bodies and our environment. The natural law of this plane of instinct is an unconscious recognition and automatic manifestation of our oneness with all life, and so we do not have lack or poverty in our bodies or environment. We only need to study all kinds of people all over the world to be convinced of this truth. As man went on his evolutionary growth and unfoldment, he began to use his physical brain to think thoughts, to imagine or image things, and in this way he began to grow and develop his intellect. The more intellectual he grew, the less instinctive he was, because unconsciously to him, his intellect, his thoughts, dominated and controlled his instinct, the intelligence or mind of the cells of his body and environment, and they, obeying his intellect, were deprived of their own initiative and the harmonious relationship which was natural to them, and he consequently attracted to his body and environment only such atoms as vibrated harmoniously with the thoughts he generated and with the new faculty, his intellect. To know the truth of this, we only have to go back to the Native American Indian and the frontiersman who, living largely in the instinctive side of their consciousness, could follow the trail of man or beast through pathless forests and could tell all about the person or animal they were following, when one who had developed his intellect and was living in that side of his life could not see anything to indicate the trail or that the forest had ever been penetrated before. some few men learned to combine their instinct and intellect and use the latter in further developing the former, and in all such cases they preserved their union, their oneness with the universal life, and knew no lack either in their body or environment. The masses, however, unconsciously used their intellect to separate them from the one life through the thoughts they generated and allowed to persist. They related in their thought world with the currents of lack, disease, fear, worry, anger, hatred, envy, jealousy, strife, resentment, resistance, impatience, intolerance, condemnation, criticism, and kindred thoughts found their home, and the more often they related with these currents, the more did they attract to themselves, both in body and environment, the atoms which would make another inharmonious physical home where these conditions could manifest in material form. As a result of the overdevelopment of the intellect and the underdevelopment of the other faculties, we find men who are living in emaciated physical bodies, devoid of all sense of instinct, inspiration, intuition, and revelation, but with an intellect that in its reason and logic is tremendous, but entirely incapable of appreciating the instinct of the physical man, the inspiration of the dreamer, the intuition of the mystic, or the wonderful revelations which comes to one who harmoniously combined and develops all of these faculties. Such persons have not yet learned that the true function of logic is to teach us the constructive use of our reason or intellectual powers along harmonious lines. These two states of consciousness, the physical and mental, deal solely with the states which have their initiative or origin in the physical body. When the physical body is destroyed by death, these two states of consciousness cease to manifest. That is, the mental state ceases to manifest as soon as death ensues, and the physical state, the intelligence in the cells of the body, the subconscious mind, at once goes to work to disintegrate the body, and upon the completion of this ceases to manifest in physical form. These two states of consciousness must have the objective body through which to manifest, otherwise their expression here on the material plane is impossible. The other states of consciousness, the soul or inspiration, the spiritual or intuitional and revelational, can manifest as well outside of the physical body as through it. It is true that in order for us to perceive the effects of their manifestations, which our physical senses, they must have a physical body of some kind through which to manifest, but they are separate and distinct from it and manifest through it rather than in it. These states of consciousness are not under the dominion or control of the physical or mental mind, neither do they in turn control the mentality in any way. The physical mind, the cell consciousness or subconscious mind, is the only mind or intelligence which is under the control of the mental mind or intellect. The term cell consciousness, as used here, includes not only the intelligence in the atoms or cells of the physical body, but also that in the atoms of which the environmental is composed. These are all under the control and domination of the intellect or mental mind. While it is true that the soul and spiritual minds or states of consciousness are not in any way under the control of the intellect, yet the latter can make conditions both in the physical body through which it is expressing and in the environment through which the soul and spiritual state of consciousness may express, And this is one of the true and constructive functions of the intellect. Through the soul state of consciousness, we derive all of our great wonderful inspirations, which increase our vibrations. And when this is accomplished under the intelligent direction of our intellect, we attract to us the more harmonious and constructive material with which we rebuild our physical bodies and their environment. Our intellect should direct us to such places where we will get this inspiration. We may obtain it in many different ways through association with those persons who already developed it, through hearing lectures, reading books, visiting art galleries, going to theatres which produce plays that inspire, through viewing a beautiful sunset, through thinking of the wonderful power manifested by nature in the raising of the lofty snow-clad peaks of the Rocky Mountains, or the never-ending flow and ebb of the tides at the seashore, through the gigantic waves that the monster ocean liners ride so easily, and through the wonderful mechanism of the human body. All these inspire us with the wonder and greatness of existence, and when our intellect permits us to revel in their inspiration, it raises our vibrations and makes us just that much stronger and more powerful. But when our intellect refuses to allow us to revel in the inspiration which these and other wonderful things give us, when it belittles the creative power of the God consciousness which manifests in all things, including man, when it places any kind of limitation upon man's possibilities, then the vibrations of our atoms are slowed down, and we draw from the formless energy everywhere around us only such atoms as vibrate at this slower rate. And it is in these currents where lack of all kinds is to be found. The spiritual state of consciousness is the vibration through which our intuition and revelation manifests. This is the vibration in which we get the real, the genuine, true blue hunches of life. This is also the plane of consciousness from which our imagination obtains its most constructive and harmonious images. The imagination is a faculty which may be used by all of these different states of consciousness. Through its use, we create everything we have both in body and environment, and the plane or state of consciousness from which we use it determines the kind and quality of the thing created. The most wonderful statement must be considered carefully in order to understand its stupendous import. Many times people mistake an impression for an intuition, and when the result proves different from what they expected, they blame it on their intuition, when as a matter of fact, they themselves were to blame for not being able to differentiate between their impression and intuition. Intuitions never have their origins from anything on the objective plane. They always come from within and are the result of our having momentarily only, perhaps, raised our physical vibrations to a point where this state of consciousness can manifest through the physical brain. Many persons do this frequently and unconsciously. They do not know how they do it, and often do not know that they have done it. And then their intellect steps in and tells them that such a thought was all foolishness, and so they pay no attention to it. When we touch this state of consciousness and know it, and then follow the leading of our intuition, we never go astray, for it is our highest state of consciousness trying to manifest through us, and by continually listening to and following its instructions, we develop it more and more. Our intellect was given to us for the purpose of taking our intuitions and revelations and working them out intelligently in material form on the physical plane. Impressions have their origin solely in the objective side of life. They come as the result of the things we have learned on the objective plane through our physical senses. We may have learned them years ago and perhaps forgotten, but they are stored up in the intellect, the mental mind, and come to us from that source. Many times this is the only way by which we learn to differentiate between them and our intuition.